Tonight on Newshour, Indian exporters are bracing for an economic storm as the United States ramps up trade pressure with an additional 25% tariff on all Indian origin goods, effective from Wednesday. Now, this move, triggered by New Delhi's increased purchasing of Russian oil, could push US duties on Indian products as high as 50%. Now, that would be one of the steepest penalties ever imposed by Washington. Well, the repercussions are already rippling through India's economy. The rupee has dipped, stock markets continue to waver, and exporters brace for a challenging road ahead. As trade tensions escalate, then New Delhi looks to diversify, eyeing new partnerships across Asia, Latin America and the Middle East. Tonight, we bring you the latest developments and ask, what will India do next? Now, as Wednesday's deadline arrives, negotiations continue behind the scenes. Let's just remind ourselves of what India's Foreign Minister Subrahmanyam Jaishankar had to say recently on the practicalities of these negotiations.
No, well, look, I mean, negotiations are still going on in the sense that nobody said the negotiations are off. You know, I mean, and people do talk to each other. I mean, it's not like there's a kutti there. So look, there is what happens is we have red lines in the negotiations. We have to be clear as to red lines by definition are lines to be maintained and defended. Keeping that in mind, see what we get. And frankly, where we are concerned, the red lines are primarily the interests of our farmers and to some extent of our small producers. The second issue, in a way, is being presented as an oil issue. But why I say is being presented is because the same arguments which have been used to target India have not been applied to the largest oil importer, which is China, has not been applied to the largest LNG importer, which is the European Union. When people say we are funding the war or putting money in the coffers of Putin, India-European Union trade is bigger than India-Russia trade. So is American money not, European money not putting money into Putin's coffers? Look, it's funny you have people who work for a pro-business American administration accusing other people of doing business. Okay, that's really curious. But here's the point. If you have a problem buying oil from India, oil or refined products, don't buy it. Nobody forced you to buy it. I mean, but Europe buys, America buys. So you don't like it, don't buy it. In 2022, there was deep nervousness because oil prices went up. There was great nervousness, international nervousness about the price of oil. And there were a set of conversations with different people in the American administration at that time that if India wanted to buy Russian oil, that's fine by us because it will stabilize the price of oil. And by the way, those, after January, there were no conversations with the current administration saying don't do that.
Okay, over to our correspondent Ishan Garg now in New Delhi to bring us up to date with the very latest developments.
With these 25% tariffs set to take effect, the burden on Indian exports will rise to 50%. India is already facing 25% retaliatory tariffs from the US imposed earlier this month. The new duties come as many exporters were actually hoping for trade talks between the two countries to offer some kind of a respite. But after a round of negotiation between Indian and the US officials scheduled to take place this month was abruptly cancelled, the writing on the wall became clear. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says the government is committed to protecting its small businesses and farmers. Various estimates suggest that the tariffs could actually cost India up to 1% of its GDP, as about a fifth of India's total exports go to the US. Analysts say if Indian businesses cannot quickly pivot to other destinations, the next few months could be tough for them. India says it is committed to finalizing a trade deal with the US still, but the specifics of when it might happen or the sectors it might involve are becoming increasingly hazy. Washington has blamed New Delhi for driving a hard bargain during negotiations. Officials here say India has drawn a so-called red line when it comes to allowing US dairy and farm imports, citing risks to its own vulnerable workers. Political analysts say that New Delhi simply might not have more elbow room without angering India's farmers, who form the biggest voting bloc in the country. To soften the blow from the latest tariffs, though, reports say that the Indian government has already started working on financial assistance packages. Now, it could offer credit guarantees to businesses or even extend loan repayment deadlines for some. But in the immediate aftermath, Indian exporters are worried about billions of dollars in losses. There's some hope that if a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine is worked out, at least the Russian oil-related 25% duties on India could go away. But until then, Indian businesses might simply have to ride out the storm. Ishan Garg for A News, New Delhi.
OK, let's delve into the detail now with our very own US correspondent, Ubay Shahbanda, who joins us from Washington. Ubay, good to see you as always. We've heard from India's foreign minister then that negotiations have been underway for some time. To be frank, it doesn't look like it's worked. What does India actually do now? Do they take the punishment, say sorry, or does New Delhi just double down on its relationships to the east? I mean, we know Prime Minister Modi is going to be heading off to China next week. So what are his tactics going to be?
Well, it used to be a sweetheart relationship between India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Trump in President Trump's first administration. If you would recall, Modi had this huge visit to the United States, taking pictures with the president, touring the United States, meeting with the Indian American community in stadiums. And it used to be a strong relationship with the United States, looking to India as part of its South Pacific strategy to push back against China, with India being who is believed to be a major competitor with China. But now the Indian economy is facing the very real reality of 50%, that's 50, tariffs by the United States by this week. And that would have a significant impact on the Indian economy, given that India is one of those emerging regional economies. But that might significantly curtail trade with the United States. And we're seeing, these reports by the German media that President Trump had, according to these reports, attempted to call Modi on a number of instances. But it seems that the Indian Prime Minister, again, if you believe these reports that are going throughout viral on social media, that it seems that the Indian leader has been upset with the threats that have been made by President Trump in the Oval Office, saying that India needs to curtail buying Russian oil. And that has been one of the many problems that President Trump, on a number of instances from sitting behind his desk in the Oval Office, has brought up to the American and international media, that he has with India's trade policy. Now, just to provide some context for our viewers, now President Trump, what he has laid out is his view that India has a protectionist economy, that while India can trade with the United States, that there is a major trade deficit, and that India has put up a number of obstacles, both tariffs and non-tariffs, for American companies to enter the Indian market, with over 1.5 billion people as its population. And so the message from the White House is that they want to see some reciprocation, but they are not seeing New Delhi taking those steps. So this was so dramatic about the fact that India could very well face 50% tariffs is that this is coming from a country that the United States had once had positive relations, that there was views that that Modi had a personal relationship with President Trump. So we might be seeing the Indian government and the Indian Prime Minister perhaps trying to make amends with China, and he's sending a message to his people that he is not going to give up or give in to President Trump's demands. But look, the European Union, the United Kingdom, some of Canada, America's largest trading partners, eventually made a deal. But it seems that India may be the last of countries that the U.S. has a positive relationship willing to make a deal to stave off massive American tariffs. And it seems President Trump and his trade team is very much intent on imposing those 50% tariffs on India if they do not agree to a deal. But perhaps Prime Minister Modi is not taking President Trump's calls. So this might not bode well for that bilateral relationship.
And finally, Ube, just give us a sense, you're someone who understands the temperature of things inside DC circles, but with people in Washington and also with regular citizens, are Trump tariffs in general still proving to be reasonably popular politically?
Yeah, I mean, this is President Trump's, other than immigration, cracking down on illegal immigration and crimes, this is President Trump's signature political promise to the American people to cut down on trade deficits, to crack down on unfair trade practices that impact the American worker and hurt American labor, and allow American companies to thrive and to compete on an equal footing with international companies. And it remains a very popular issue with the Americans, particularly with blue-collar working-class Americans, many of whom voted for President Trump, and which allowed his significant electoral victory in that election last year. So this remains a key talking point by President Trump, and one that resonates across wide sectors of the American electorate.
Okay, Ube Sharbanda, thank you very much indeed. So as the deadline hits and India prepares to travel east in search of new partnerships, that just about wraps up our deep dive into US-India trade relations for this edition. As the story continues to evolve, though, we'll be here to keep you up to date on TV, the A News website, the app, and of course, across all our social media platforms. From all of us here, thanks for being with us.